Three, two, one.
Welcome to Breaking Traction Podcast.
Brought to you by High Speed Lifestyle and Shift Trash Media.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Justin. Today we're going to give you a brief rundown because right now you're wondering who the hell we are while we're sitting here talking to you.
I'm wondering the same thing.
All right? Yeah, you know why we're here?
No. Not a
Why
clue.
are we here?
We're getting ready to give you a good idea. So this podcast was put together quite simply to talk about autocross, road racing, and pro touring. I'm just a fanboy. I like watching it, trying to get into it. I will one day. I'm sitting here with two experienced guys in the field. Well, Brandon, you tell us about you.
Experienced. Well, honestly, I'm a shop owner. I build hot rods and race cars every single day, year round. In the last 5 years, I've got into the autocross and road racing. It's been a hell of a time. I definitely think the sport's growing, and I definitely think we can get a whole lot more people into this sport because I don't think there's not enough people that know about it yet.
Right. Definitely, pretty much unless you know somebody that's into it, you don't know much about it. Like, I come from a drag racing background. I'd heard of it, thought it looked kind of boring, went to an event, was blown away. Got to ride with Mike at the Pro Touring Truck Shootout in Bowling Green. Mike, you come from kind of a hot rodding background and fell into this. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I had no idea autocross existed until a buddy of mine said, "Come on, let's go." And I went, and I pretty much hooked. It's way more fun than drag racing, in my opinion.
Right.
Drag racing's fun a few times. Autocross is fun every time.
Right.
And you can autocross anything.
Yeah, nobody wants to see a 20-second pass on a drag strip.
No. Yeah. What do you drive on autocross course for?
We have a 1952 Ford F1. LS swapped, basic.
It still works. It performs, right?
Nothing fancy.
Yeah. I drive a 06 NBS, which would be a new generation Chevy Silverado, and I have a 1980 two-wheel drive K5 Blazer.
Right, and so that's another thing is your stuff is a little more purpose-built than, say, Mike's was originally. Your NBS isn't, I wouldn't call it wild build by any means.
No.
It's been a progression.
Yeah.
But that's another thing is even with the way your truck is built versus Mike, your truck, you and your dad built that to be like a show truck, just cruiser. Go get ice cream with, so to speak. And
I do like ice cream.
Right, who doesn't like ice cream? And you've transitioned over into autocrossing it quite a bit. You come from a drag racing background like I do.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
You've transitioned with this, and your truck has slowly been built for this. Of course, as a shop owner, you've learned a lot more, or experienced more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Starting out in this, when I went to the first race, man, I had no idea what I was walking into. I didn't know how to set it up. I just thought the most horsepower, and I'm going to outdrive everybody out here, and man, I was wrong. As you grow and you go to more events and you talk to more drivers, and there is a ton of drivers that we are going to bring to your all's attention. That's another thing with this podcast is we want to bring the audience to the driver. About like you would NASCAR or an NHRA race or something. We're just doing it for the pro touring scene. But back to what you were saying, yeah, the truck that I raced predominantly, it started off as a drag truck. Then I figured out that I got really tired of drag racing. Decided I wanted to make it my shop truck and just a fun, thing to go get parts and stuff like that in. And went to the first autocross event, blew my motor after 3 laps, and I was hooked after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's another thing you touched on just a second ago was you can autocross anything. Mike said nobody wants to see a 20-second run at a drag strip. Let's face it, that's true. Even making that 20-second run at a drag strip, the excitement fades about 30 feet after you cross the Christmas tree. So, with that being said, there's the old saying, it is more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. With that, anything can autocross, and it's going to be fun because it's fairly low speeds, but it's tight turns, it's slaloms, you're learning.
It's a driver's race.
Thank you. There you go.
Anybody who thinks they are a driver, like a real driver, come out and try autocross. And try it in your vehicle. And then if you feel like you're up to the task, let somebody with more experience drive your vehicle. And then it'll really open your eyes up to, okay, I'm not as good as I thought I was. We've always been taught everybody thinks they're a real driver until they sit in a seat with a real driver.
Right. I mean, and that's another thing. Like you said, if you're really, really on the fence about it, go to an event. There may not be tons and tons of events around you, but there's SCCAs for almost every region in the U.S. You got the good guys. They travel around. They do it at most of their events. You got the Hot Rod Nationals, which you'll actually be at this weekend. They do it at most of their events.
Yeah, there are more and more popping up all over the U.S. The sport is slowly taking over. And I've had a lot of people argue that with me, but I'm more than happy to show the proof to you.
Well, I mean, just with that, this year's Hot Rod Power Tour, they did autocross at, was it every stop? I believe?
Four out of the five.
4 out of the 5 stops. So, I mean, it's growing, and it goes to show the Power Tour is mostly like show cars and cruisers for the most part, and those guys are getting out there and autocrossing those.
Well, I mean, most of your bigger shows are now starting to entertain the idea of actual racing at the event, because I love car shows as much as the next guy, but once you walk around and you see everything, you've seen it all. And I personally, it's as hot as it is in the summer, sitting underneath the canopy with, even underneath the canopy with no wind blowing or anything like that, after you've seen everything there for 6 hours, kind of
it gets very monotonous very quickly.
It really makes me think. It really makes me want to do something else. And with autocross and them opening up more events at these shows, it's not only giving guys like me who don't care to show and race something to do, but it's also giving the crowd entertainment there at the same time. And, I'm okay with being the entertainment value at a show. That ain't no problem. I'll do a couple, because we'll slide out. We'll do, we'll spin out, do donuts. We'll do burnouts, strictly on accident, of course, because we're trying to get past times. But, either way, it's a good time and it's a good show.
That's another thing, is it's very family friendly. It's not like, we'll say, some other events that you may see on TV where there's a whole bunch of trash talk and fighting and arguing. None of the events that I've been to are like that. But the thing is, go and talk to somebody. If you see a racer, you see a cool vehicle, talk to them. Most of the guys are super cool and will talk to you. And even you can go from there. And this is what kind of got me, is like I said, I thought autocross seemed kind of boring until I witnessed it in person. And I was fortunate enough at the Pro Touring Truck Shootout.
Man, don't mess that up. You
Jacked
are
it up.
just butchering that
I
name.
know, every time.
Arnie is going to be
He's
so
gonna
upset
beat
with
me
you.
up.
It's Pro Touring Truck Shootout.
I say truck every time.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough at the Pro Touring Truck Shootout to, I rode for 3/4 of your runs. I rode with you.
Couldn't get you out of the truck.
It was a blast. And that's another thing, is you can have somebody ride with you at most of these events. So if you've got a helmet, go make some friends, and somebody will take you for a ride. It will change your mind.
Mike, I know the shootout was the first time you raced in the truck, but like your first, I don't even know if you remember that far back, but your first autocross event, your SEC event, like, can you explain to me how you felt?
Nervous,
Yeah.
very nervous. But I was driving a completely stock 29,000 mile Trans Am Firebird.
Nice.
100% stock, except for the neon lights under it.
So you're putting on a show while you're putting on a show.
So is this an attest for how long ago this was, or just
the car was
the way
pretty
the
old.
car was? Okay.
This was probably 10 years ago.
Okay.
Man, it was awesome. The tires were horrible. The brakes were horrible. 150 horsepower, whatever that. But it was awesome. It was the most fun I'd ever had in a vehicle.
Yeah. I think that's something that we cannot describe to you all enough. It is so much fun. My children ride with me. My wife has driven my race truck. I know there's plenty of other, there's some kids that are coming up that are, 14, 15 that are starting. There's a husband and wife duos. I'm watching it. I mean, it's awesome to see.
Right.
Because you can also do what they call a co-drive. You can have one vehicle, and you and another person can co-drive it. So that's a whole other option for you both. You know, if two friends want to get into it, want to go in on a cheap car or a cheap truck together, they can, and they can literally both co-drive it together. It's not a one-person sport. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It definitely is opening my eyes up to a whole new world of racing. That, like I said, I'm still new at this too. I've only been in it 4 or 5 years, so
Right.
yeah, I've still got a lot to learn. But man, every single time, there's not one time that I've ever run an autocross course or a road race course and not been smiling when I came off the course.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's incredible. It's incredible.
So that leads in. You can go to your small. I'm not gonna say small time, but your smaller attended SCCA events. Where you said there's all kinds of shows and stuff that do it as well. But then you can get into the big events where there's tons of people. Speaking of that, both of you guys will be at LS Fest East in Bowling Green at Beach Bend this year.
The Super Bowl of LS right there, buddy.
Right.
Hey, they can say what they want about, Las Vegas and Texas. I'm telling you, the Super Bowl of LS is right here in Kentucky.
Right. So for somebody like myself that's never been, Mike, you've been to all but how many?
3.
So you are extremely versed in the world of LS
I've
Fest.
seen it grow.
Right. You've been to several.
I went to the very first one.
Very first one.
I missed the very first
I
one.
was at the very first one, and to see it then to what it was even last year, there were 61,000 people there last year.
Ridiculous. I missed last year.
Yeah. The last year, I think they said it was like 60-some thousand people there, and there were over 2,900 vehicles just in the show side of it. Not the racing side of it, just the show side of it.
It's crazy. I remember the show was like 20 cars.
Yep.
In the beginning?
In the beginning.
Oh, yeah, dude. In the beginning, there was
nobody.
I think max, you may have seen 100 people there.
That's ridiculous. So let's give a quick rundown. Take us through LS Fest as a competitor.
Mike, you want to go first,
You wanna
bud?
go?
I
Is this
haven't
your
been a
first
competitor
time?
very much.
Very much.
Yeah. Same guy that let me borrow his Trans Am let me borrow his Corvette one year. And so I got to run. I only ran it twice on Autocross. But it was fun. But as far as I always entered just the show, just to be there and for the good parking.
I mean, what's it like for you as a person? I mean, since me and you have been there a bunch, what was it like for you to watch those guys down on the track?
It just made me want to do it. You know?
I mean, it's
but
like
I was in the train of thought that I don't have the vehicle for that. And once you get around that, you realize that anybody can do it. But it's a little overwhelming having, all the big name people come in, and you're thinking, I'm not on that level. I can't get out there with them. But you could.
Right.
Well, if you had a list.
If I had no list.
I mean, and when Mike says big name people, what he's saying is like we have drivers who are there who are professional race car drivers. That's what they get paid to do for a living is race. I mean, the guy who won LS Fest last year, his name's Brian Finch, in the truck class. That guy's a 4-time winning Baja 1000 champion.
Right.
4 times. That's 100+ miles an hour for 1,000 miles in the desert. Not only during the day, but at night.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, when you start realizing who you're racing against, at first you're right. It's like, oh man, am I really? Should I even be here right now? I'm sorry, but man, once you I was in the same position you were, man. Like I remember I think it was 2017 or 2018, maybe 2019. I remember looking down there in the field and watching those guys run, and I'm like, man, those dudes are rock stars. You know what I mean? When you've got that many people surrounded and cheering, and there are people there who know these drivers by name, know everything about their vehicle, almost like if they had it all written on like a card, like a baseball card or something. But man, once I got over that fact of like, man, I don't know if I can even do that. once I got over that, the first one, yes, it was crazy. Yes, it's hectic as a competitor. But man, I wouldn't change it. I mean, there is nothing like pulling into LS Fest, that opening, or as soon as we come into the gate, and you just see a crowd of people. I mean, literally, just a crowd of people as you pull in, and they've got this special little parking for all of us to park at. Almost like you're not really VIP, but it's just so we can get into the track easier. Right. But you're in the center of everything, and then everybody is coming up and talking to you and asking you questions and stuff. It's a wild time, man. It's such a wild time.
Right. So I mean, if you get over the nerves, it seems to me as a non-driver, it seems to me like the chance to be on the track with the Finches of the world, with just the chance to see how far below them I would be.
Yeah.
But that's not only, to me, that would be cool just to do it. Say, yeah, no, I raced at LS Fest, blah, blah. But it's going to start your baseline. Everybody that races, I don't care what you race. If you race freaking bicycles, dirt bikes, autocross drag race, you're always looking for progression, whether it be with your equipment and your own skill.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Talk about a baseline, though. You see where you're at a local event, and then see where you're at against some of the best in the world. To me, you may look at it like, damn, they really kicked my butt. But you've got a good baseline to see where you're progressing for the next year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just to put in perspective, like realistically put in perspective, the gentleman who got me started, like really started in autocross, was a guy named Arnie Gonzalez. He's the guy who puts on the Pro Touring Truck Shootout. He also owns OBS Chevy Truck Racing, where he builds one-off suspension kits for 88 to 98 Chevy pickups, strictly just to race. And, man, I rode with him one time, and I was like, wow, this guy is really fast. But I'd never heard of him. Or I kept thinking, like, man, I know this guy from somewhere, but I'd never heard the name. Yeah, I didn't realize that where I'd remembered Arnie from the first time was he was on an episode of Hoonigans. On the episode where they were racing the Big Red, or where the Big Red Camaro was doing the quarter or the mile-long race. Mm-hmm. The red OBS Chevy truck in there, that's Arnie. And that was before there was a lot of guys racing trucks, but there are a few key players in the beginning that really, it was like a group within a group, especially in the truck side of it. But once you got to know those guys were very open. And, you know, some of the best drivers that I've ever been around have been very open to giving you information as long as you're willing to listen.
Right.
You know, don't come in there and think you're going to dominate everybody. Don't come in there and be, you know, cocky or anything like that. Come in there with a good attitude, you know, a willingness to have fun, and an open ear, and you're going to learn more from that first time than you ever thought was even possible. Actually, you'll probably have to go back and ask them 2 or 3 times because they're going to almost give you too much information. It's a lot to take in, but I mean, just getting over that first hump and entering in a race, you know, or like you said, go ride. Just take that first step. You know what I mean?
So, with that being said, if you tune in for our next episode, these two are going to give you a rundown on LS Fest prep, the way they do it, the way that they get their trucks ready, what they take with them, their tool bag, things to make your life a little more less hectic while you're there. So be sure you tune in next time. That's going to do it for this. We hope you got a good feel of who we are. We hope to see you next time. Be sure to check out High Speed Lifestyle on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And check out Shift Trash Media on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Thanks for watching.